Greetings, you pop culture junkies, and welcome to Raw Rant, where honesty is the game plan and truth is the destination. We're hanging out here with some of our favorite sweaty nerds to hopefully stimulate your brains and recharge your geeky souls. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Shane Montgomery, and with me, as always, rocking the boards is my brother, Brian Montgomery. Thank you. It worked this week. And joining us tonight on Raw Rant is a man who has helped fill our empty Star Trek hearts. Picard Season 3 co-executive producer, Christopher Monfette. Glad to have you here, Chris.
Thank you. The different applauses.
Also joining us directly from the Burnett work, our one and only Duke of Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett.
Robert Meyer Burnett!
It's a great pleasure to be here. We're going to talk some Clive Barker, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Damn it.
Clive Barker.
I want to talk some of Magica, man.
If he does show up, hopefully he will. He's not crashed out, sleeping on his floor somewhere with his dog Worf. The Dave Cullen.
I don't see him here.
He's not here yet, but we gotta give him that because later on I'm not going to give it to him. So
all right, okay.
And last but not least, if your diet is low in sodium and you need someone as your wingman at any Las Vegas convention, Matt from the Salty Nerd Podcast.
Getting salty.
Oddly enough, I'm not the saltiest one though. That title belongs to my co-hosts. But,
okay, now
quickly
quickly
to be here and
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, I'm wondering what the future of Captain Georgiou is going to be now that she's an Oscar winner.
Oh, well, let's hold up on that thought because that actually might be good. But before we jump into the panel with our amazing guests, I want to thank EKSTER Wallets for sponsoring today's show. There may not be any need for a wallet in the future of Star Trek, but it's a necessity for us in our daily lives now. And oh boy, did we find the last wallet you will ever need to own. We have discovered the most efficient smart wallet in the world, and it's made by EKSTER. They have revolutionized the wallet, and we will never go back to bifold. Super slim, sleek, and futuristic EKSTER wallets can fit in your front pocket and still hold up to 12 cards. This high-quality wallet combines Italian leather, space-grade aluminum, and carbon fiber with built-in RFID blocking to protect you from wireless theft. Oh yeah, it comes with a tracking device too, so you'll never have to worry about losing your wallets. Check out EKSTER Wallets right after this video. The link is in the description below. Go to shop.ekster.com/thepopcast and get 25% off your order when you use the code ThePopcast. Now, let's get to Picard Season 3. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You, Terry, and the team have given us an incredible treat for the final season of Picard. Can you tell us a little bit about your role in the process and sort of just take us through how you guys broke down what you wanted to do this season?
Yeah, of course. So I've known Terry for almost 15 years now. We worked together on a show called 12 Monkeys that ran 4 seasons on Sci-Fi. Which was, a really emotional, character-driven, labyrinthian, time-travel science fiction show. And I think, Easter eggs and references that 12 Monkeys fans will recognize throughout the season aside, a lot of the sort of tools and tricks that we're using this season on Picard to really elevate the characters and to really, propel the story forward are kind of philosophies and things that we learned and developed on our time over there. And so in some ways it was a really terrific it was a really terrific 4-season practice session for being able to sort of inherit this particular mantle and to try to do it justice in a way that I think the fans are hopefully enjoying and will realize that the amount of love and respect that we pour into it. So when Terry got brought over for season 2, he reached out to me and asked me to come along with him. And, we're both obviously not just science fiction fans, but specifically Trek fans. And, season 2 sort of unfolded under the supervision of Akiva Goldsman, who was really sort of shepherding that forward at the time. And so while we were trying to, through COVID and all of that, help him execute his vision of that second season, we were really planning for what we wanted to do in season 3. When Terry really did fully take over the mantle and we got the keys to the car in a lot of respects. And those conversations happened over a very long time about how it was going to be best to take these iconic, legendary legacy characters and treat them with sort of respect and with grace, and make them familiar, but also find them in different places in their lives, and then also how to restrain ourselves in the way that they come into the story, so that you're not just sort of vomiting out nostalgia from moment one, right? That it's not just, look, they're all together in the first episode. It really was about what is sort of the last meaningful emotional story of Jean-Luc Picard, and then how would all of these people fold slowly into it as that story plays out, and where would we find them in their lives that's meaningful and speaks to the themes and all of that. So sort of a long-winded answer to your question, but we really came into it with respect and passion and an understanding of the ground that seasons 1 and 2 had tread, and a real belief of where we thought it needed to go in season 3. And we were lucky to be given the freedom to do that. So, the fans will be the judge of whether we did it well or not. But, hopefully people seem to be loving it so far. So,
yeah, the feedback seems fantastic so far. So what do you guys attribute to the success? What's it like in the writer's room? Tell us, I think it's what everybody wants to know. That's how where the recipes come together and you actually cook this great meal of whatever show you're making. So what's it like in the writer's room? And you guys were together on 12 Monkeys mostly, right? So did the team come over and how does that help?
No, it was an interesting mix. We had some Monkeys vets and we had new writers who had come into the process, just with Picard and with Trek. And Terry I think Terry's gift as a showrunner, right, is like he doesn't know how to play the instrument. He knows how to play the orchestra. And so he builds a writer's room of people who all have very sort of specific skill sets. And then he knows how to apply those skill sets to the story he's trying to tell. So, he came in with a vision for the season, sort of thematically, what's it going to be about, narratively, what are some sort of touch points that we want to hit. But everybody in that room sort of does a certain thing well. And, what we were really honored to do is not only be given the freedom to write to our strengths, but to all work on the show together, right? So it was never, Chris, you write this episode solely. This person, you write this episode solely. It was a getting to know who sort of best represented what different ideas and points of view, and we all got to sort of sing together as a choir. So there are a lot of voices in every script of the show. Every script is made better and more consistent and elevated because as you go through the process, you get a real sense of who writes best for who, like who's good at action, who's good at high concept thinking, who writes Picard well, who writes Riker well. And once you sort of get to know that and you get into that groove, you all start chipping in and it really becomes a tremendously collaborative process. And so, hopefully it feels like there's a consistency of voice across the season, not just Terry's vision. So
awesome. It's funny. One of the things from previous, and we're not going to beat up previous Star Trek seasons here, but one of the things that was really obvious about the first couple seasons of Picard is there were a lot of, in our opinion, plot holes, things that just didn't kind of get meshed with well. Do you guys sit down and like draw up a plan and like, do you address each idea and go, okay, well, how do we make that pay off? Or, how do we make sure that we don't leave anything behind? Do you guys have a process for that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is, season 1 and 2 in some ways, and it really is because there are fans of the show who really do like those seasons. Like, some prefer 1, some prefer 2, some don't like either, and that's fine. Like that's the great thing about Trek is it's a very large umbrella, right? And so, Michael Chabon had a very specific vision for season 1. Akiva had a very specific vision for season 2. And what you don't want to do is, when it comes time to exercise your vision of the show, to kind of retcon or pass sort of like retroactive judgment on what came before, right? So you want to pick up the baton of okay, Picard has a synthetic body. To what degree do we address that or not address that? We have to respect that. We can't just assume that didn't happen, right? So there are certain choices that have just defined the trajectory of the story, that have defined the world, and you do your best to honor that and incorporate it into the story in what is hopefully a smart way. I think Dave in some of his pieces, I've seen he's used the phrase "hang a lantern on," right? So we hang a lantern on it, we acknowledge it. Yes, that is true. If you think that's cool, great. If you didn't like it, fine. It's not going to destroy your enjoyment of the story this season. And so we just picked the things that we liked about the show that we responded to that fit with the story we were trying to tell, and then just ran with that and ignored the rest. So.
Hey, Chris, we got a super chat from Rebecca Spade for $5. Thank you, Rebecca. She asked a question. She said, loving Picard season 3 right now. And she says, did you always want Todd for the Shaw role?
The answer to that question is yes. We've worked with Todd on 12 Monkeys, and we love him. He is a dear friend of mine. We play in a D&D group together. You never expect when you go on a show like this that you're going to make friends with the cast. You are friendly with them, you're professional, you have bonds that are formed in the moment, but you never expect all of these people are going to come to Thanksgiving dinner, right? And so Todd is one of the ones that Terry and I especially just truly connected to, bonded with, formed a genuine friendship. And so when we were trying to create this character of Shaw and we knew all the qualities that we wanted him to embody, we just in the room as a placeholder were like, oh yeah, okay, so Captain Stashwick comes in the room and he says this. And we called him Captain Stashwick. It just became truth at a certain point that nobody's playing this part other than Todd. And then so, he obviously got his name once we reached the point in the story where folks have seen now, where he gives that incredible sort of Jaws-inspired monologue. Robert Shaw as Quint. We sort of named the character in honor of that. But we always called him Todd Stashwick in the writer's room, with Captain Stashwick. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Was there a Deacon quality to so did you go look, we got to have Deacon on a starship from 12 Monkeys? Was there that thought, or is just Todd just embodies that kind of character?
Yeah. The great thing about Todd is that there are certain things that he exudes naturally, right? Humor, charisma. He can play incredibly charismatic, and he can play very droll and can I come in? No. Officially, no. Unofficially, no. He has that delivery. But the other amazing thing about Todd is not just what he does naturally, it's what he can do just with his instrument, right? The guy's an amazing actor. And so, with Todd, look, who you are naturally vibes with who this character is. But we also know that once you get in here and you start playing in this sandbox, you're going to be able to execute all of the things about Captain Shaw that are not Deacon. And you're going to be able to make those feel original and awesome and cool. And so, Todd is such a gifted actor, and this is so his moment that he has earned and deserved, that we just kind of knew, look, even where this character does and will not necessarily be Deacon in space, Todd is going to be able to, aim for the bleachers and smash it out of the park.
We got a super chat from No Money G. Thank you for this. I felt like I was punched in the face and thrown down a flight of stairs with the newer stuff. Love Picard season 3.
That's visual.
Thank you, No Money G.
That's our creative goal. That's when we're in the room, we're like, how do we make the audience feel like we've thrown them down a flight of stairs emotionally? So I'm glad.
The key is to hire Todd Stashwick. That'll solve the problem.
If I had $1 for every person who said that he was their new favorite character, I would be rich right now. He's really come across well.
We knew this was probably going to happen, but I think everybody honestly has been taken a little bit by surprise at the degree to which fans have really warmed to this character and memeified this character and embraced him, which is obviously what you hope for, right? You want to create a character that's going to move people and entertain people. And he's done that, and he deserves every ounce of what he's getting from this, and it's so rewarding to see that. So,
what he deserves is a lead, though. I want to see him lead a show. I tweeted out that they should remake the Rockford Files and make him Jim Rockford.
Look, every time Terry and I have a conversation about what can we do next or what do we want to do, it's always okay, what do we go create for Todd? Because we love him and we love to work with him, and so that would be a dream.
We got a question from
why wasn't Aaron Stanford given a more prominent role in Picard?
Well, I mean, Sneed's pretty great. I think
there's only one episode.
I think when you look back, you don't necessarily look back at the sort of pantheon of actors you've worked with and go, how do I jam them in here, right? It becomes about what's the best part for that actor, and if there's a place for them, we'll reach out and include, and there will be more cameos as the episodes go on.
We got a question from James Hancock. Question for Chris: for fans who are coming back to the franchise, due to the approach of season 3, what future Star Trek projects can we look forward to? Oof, that's a loaded question.
Look, all I can say at this point is, look forward to the next 6 episodes of this season, right? Like, if you're liking the season, if you're loving the season, there is 6 more weeks of story left to tell that we hope will really bring you in and engage you. What Paramount and the powers that be choose to do moving forward is a complex alchemy of how passionately and vocal the fans tell them that they've responded to this season, and just whether it's sort of in their wheelhouse and their machinations to do more. I mean, we're here, we're willing. We would love nothing more than to continue to tell Trek stories, and certainly I know that there are plans to continue the franchise, and hopefully we can be a part of that. So
that's awesome. Curtis S for 999. Thank you, Curtis. Great choices with the musical motifs we all know and love. Yeah, by the way, the music is so important.
Oh my God, yes.
How did you decide on the trajectory for the plot, Changelings, lore, and Moriarty, plus the theme of the 80s movies? Great ending happening.
A lot of it was just, you sit around, you blue sky at a certain point. Like the first few days and weeks of a writer's room aren't like, okay, here's exactly, you don't come in knowing exactly what you're going to do. So some of it really is starting with, for lack of a better term, it's a term I hate, starting with member berries, right? Like, what are the things we'd like to revisit? What are some things that we took from Next Gen that we found meaningful or just stuck in our cultural memories? But then it becomes, okay, so now that we've got this sort of soup of random ingredients and pieces, and we love lore, and I love the Changelings from Deep Space Nine, and someone would go, I love Moriarty, and all that stuff. Now it becomes about, okay, you have to throw all of that sort of nostalgia love out and go, what can you do with these story elements that's a genuine story? Like, they all have to be earned. They all have to be not only emotionally earned, but narratively earned, so that you're not just throwing nostalgia at people for the sake of nostalgia. You're just using the reality of the world to tell a story and serve the theme, and since some of this is Picard, what does he have to do next in his life as he looks back on where he's been? These were sort of the ingredients we all collectively enjoyed as a writer's room, and this was the way we could figure out how to put them together where they all felt right at where they come into the story and didn't just feel like we were like, just throwing up nostalgia all over the screen.
That's a good point. Gavin Blackbird for a super sticker. Thank you, Gavin. It's if you guys didn't see it, it's a heart emoji. So he loves someone here. I'm sure it's probably Dave. Also from Dennis Sheridan, without spoiling anything, was there a wish list of things you wanted to include in season 3? Did you get to do everything?
For the most part, yes. The stuff that we look, there's a million things we could have done. There's a million things we'd like to have done. But the stuff that we really put out there and the stuff that we really latched on to, for the most part, we were able to fit organically into the show. There were a couple of, there's always those sort of episodes or things where you play around with in the writer's room where you'll go down a road and for whatever reason it won't fit, or it's too expensive, or it doesn't get you from here to here the right way. That would normally be like, if there were an episodic equivalent of deleted scenes, right? Like they would be the lost episodes of the season. But for the most part, everything that we really wanted to do, we got to do. And so I think we're very happy and proud. So
I got to tell you, the first 4 episodes are such a wonderful first act of the show. Did you guys consciously decide you wanted to end that first act with such a positive, hopeful reflection on what these characters are truly all about, and like this throwback to TNG and how we felt about the characters at that time? I mean, you really pulled off at the end of episode 4 that sort of hopeful feeling we have about these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all we all got into this because we love Star Trek, right? And we all remember what Star Trek was and is and means to us. And so while, yeah, part of the drama, right, and the challenge of this is introducing characters who haven't necessarily had these kinds of conflicts, and exploring those, and how are they the same and how are they different? How has age changed them, and how are they still fundamentally the people we know and love? So yeah, you get an episode like episode 3 where you put those people into conflict in a way which to old school TNG fans might feel new, might feel weird, might feel scary. Like, I don't like Riker and Picard like this. But the goal is never to linger in that for long, right? The payoff to that needs to be, we're going to circle back to the spirit of Star Trek. And the spirit of Star Trek is those characters who were just in conflict one episode ago, sitting on a bridge looking at the birth of new life because they've just worked together to overcome an incredible challenge, right? And so, none of us came to this wanting to sort of spit in the eye of the Star Trek we grew up with, right? You want to honor that, you want to put that on screen, you want to celebrate it. And so as much as 3 and 4 are a little bit of a two-parter, it was just, how do we create a little drama to get to this place so that place has more impact than if we just started there. So
well said. So talk a little bit about Worf. So Worf and Rafi in the upcoming preview to episode 5 we have coming, that if you guys watched the after show, I guess, on Paramount Plus, they actually showed Worf and Rafi having a scene together, and then we find out that that Daystrom is not letting them come. So they've been denied access to Daystrom. Can you explain a little bit about the relationship of Rafi and Worf, why you guys paired them together, and kind of what was the motivation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a good chunk of that motivation is we love Michelle. That character, Rafi as a character, is so, she's so endemic to the series, right? Like she was there in the first season, there in the second season. Audiences loved her. She had such a great rapport in season 2 with Jerry, and has such a rich history with Patrick. That what you don't want to do is sort of come into a season like this and throw out everything that came before, right? Now, certainly certain actors and characters, their stories resolved in season 2, and they didn't come back for season 3. But Rafi was always a character we knew we wanted to bring forward. We knew there was more story to tell with her, and we knew that we could utilize her in a way that served our story and also grew her character. And so, we put her on this sort of spy path. And, what happens when you take the ex-addict and they have to go down the sort of rabbit hole, right? Once again, what temptations does that bring in them? And, and pairing her, with Worf, who has this new sort of worldview of, I'm very much a warrior monk. I'm still the Worf with the swords. I'm still the badass. I'm still in action scenes, but I'm gonna keep the fire of this character contained and teach her how to focus all of that energy and passion that she has. So it just felt like a natural pairing, and those stories you will find very quickly merge with the story of the folks on the Titan, and you'll see how we are telling one complete story.
Got a super chat from Brian Harvard. He says, as important as this discussion is, I need to know, R&B, how are those puppies doing?
They're getting bigger every day. So yeah, it's terrifying.
Also from Rebecca
to have
Spade.
New life.
Rebecca Spade, another question for the panel. What's your favorite episode this season?
Episode 4, no doubt.
The ones that have aired, you mean?
Yeah.
So far. That's a great question.
Some of us aren't cool enough to get to hang out with Terry Metalis.
No, I think episode 4 is a banger and it's what I love is you guys, and I was going to ask you this, I guess, as a question since this came up. It feels to me like you very consciously wrote a movie over 10 hours. Episodes 1 through 4 are Act 1. Mm-hmm. Episodes 5 through 8 are Act 2, and 9 and 10 are the mic dropping climax. And I think it's really interesting, an interesting approach to serialized storytelling, because it works really, really well. Like if you were to take episodes 1 through 4 and watch just those, I mean, it would be that'd be a satisfying movie to go see in the theater, and then knowing that there would be a movie in 2 years or a year later. Was that something you had thought about doing intentionally in terms of structuring all 10 episodes that way?
We just knew we wanted to tell one cohesive story, and I think what we've learned, and maybe this is to some extent a carryover from what we did on Monkeys. The interesting thing about Monkeys is it's this crazy labyrinthian time travel that connects in the first episode, connects to the last episode, whatever. But what we always tried to do is, while you're telling this ongoing story, you're telling these episodic adventures, right? So that you feel at the end of every episode that you got a meal, right? It had to start, it had to finish. It wasn't just like you could have cut anywhere, right? And so, I think that is very much part of Terry's, ethos, right? Which is every episode needs to feel like its own complete thing. And then those things in total need to feel like its own complete story. And, I think, in some ways, 1 to 4 is its own thing. You could kind of argue 1 and 2 is a 2-parter, 3 and 4 is a 2-parter. 5 and 6, I think, actually, of all of the episodes of this season, have the most individual identities. They don't necessarily feel like a continuation of each other. Whereas I think 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 are very much kind of like 2-hour movies.
Right.
But really, it's just what gets you to tell the best story. And
Yeah, super chat from Maria. Much love to all involved in the show. Love season 3 and keep the super chat, guys. Thank you, Maria. I'm sorry, real quick, a dangerous question from Dustin Cole. And that's, I say dangerous because I'm not sure how you even answer this. Is there a specific member berry, or I like to call them Roddenberry, you wanted to but couldn't make it work? Hashtag Cherry Trek.
No, not really. I mean, there are certain storylines. I don't know if I'm allowed to suggest that we explored that would have, how do I say this? Would have revisited some interesting emotional characters from Seven's past that we would have liked to have gotten to. Unfortunately, we just didn't have the bandwidth in terms of where that would have fit into the story to do it. But
I knew it. It was Tuvix.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, we were really blessed to get to do almost everything that we really passionately wanted to do this season.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask you about the inspiration from Wrath of Khan, because the first 4 episodes seemed like oh, we're going to do our version of Wrath of Khan with the next gen characters, and there's a lot of nods to it. So I wanted to know, what was the thinking behind, like, hey, why don't we throw in the best Star Trek movie into the best season of Picard?
There's a couple of interesting, I think, answers to that question. One of which is the comp we used in The Room more than anything was actually Crimson Tide. That was very much, how do we create Crimson Tide with Picard and Riker? How do we do a submarine story? And so to the extent that story is a nautical story, to the extent that we have a charismatic villain, there sort of DNA similarities? Yes. But in some senses, that's only because Wrath of Khan was so, can I curse on this? Am I allowed? It was so successful at taking that story and imprinting it on the creative lexicon of writers that followed, that you can say any number of them. You could say, well, yeah, Crimson Tide is just a Wrath of Khan movie in some ways, not always, right? So what we tried to do is we tried to do our best version of a Crimson Tide story and our best version of a charismatic villain who ultimately has a very, I think you will find, human and empathetic reason for what they want. And I think those things have just become synonymous with the Wrath of Khan template. So in as much as we can give a playful wink and a nod to what came before, great. It was never intentional to do that. It was always, how do we just tell a tense nautical sinking in sea story that puts these 2 iconic characters at loggerheads with each other under the pressure of a unique foe. So
Crimson Tide with jellyfish. That's fun.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we got a question that I'm pretty sure you can't answer, but from Foxhound, do we get any Janeway? And I thank you for the super chat, but there's no way we can answer that question without a spoiler.
No, I will not answer this question because, and it's not to be obtuse or anything. It's that to give those kinds of answers suggest that you could just ask these questions, and if I answer them honestly, eventually you'll be able to figure out what is or isn't in the show.
Right.
So I just let the surprises be surprises, and hopefully you like them. So
Chris, you know what I keep doing? Every time someone asks me a spoilery question, I just respond with the Spock eyebrow raise and says fascinating. I have no idea how to answer. So,
well, what's funny is out of all the people on this panel, I'm the only one who hasn't seen the full season. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, does Janeway appear? Do we get Wesley Crusher because he was at the end of the last season? Does he show up?
Matthew, don't feel so bad. I've only seen the first 10, so
I've also only seen the first 10. So
I was just telling Terry the other day that I always loved it. I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and so I loved it during Stephen Moffat's tenure, where he would always kind of joke. There's a line throughout the show that he would go, "The Doctor lies," right? And then every now and then he would say, "And so do I." And so when people would ask him spoilery questions, he'd just lie. And then when they were like, "Well, hey, that's not what happened," he just went, "Yeah, I lied to you because I want you to be entertained and enjoy the show." So I told Terry, you should just start lying. You just, when people ask you things, just say, "Yeah, it's totally in the show."
So you mentioned Seven's past a second ago. So recently, Robert Beltran came out and said that he was being considered for something in Picard season 3. Can you? I know we've got episodes to go, so it may give away something. But is there anything you can say about, was he planning to be on the show, or was there an attempt to get him on the show? And if so, in what way?
No, that was specifically in reference to season 2. So in the first 2 episodes of season 2, in the sort of alternate history, you may remember that Seven found herself married to a particular, dictator magistrate character who would have been, we briefly entertained the notion of, could that be sort of like an alt mirror Chakotay?
that would be so rad.
We went down that rabbit hole, I think, a little bit, but ultimately decided to go with just the one particular more generic character, because it felt like you were bringing a lot of emotional baggage and questions into that episode at a time when you had a lot of sort of logic and plot questions that needed to get answered. And so, we weighed either or, whether to make it a legacy character or just a regular sort of dictator character.
Chris, I was wondering, so one of the biggest critics of previous Star Trek has been Red Letter Media.
Yeah.
And they've come out and they're like, we really want to like this, but I'm still not quite on board, but the writing seems so much better. Like do you guys look at someone like them who've been famous for like just being very poignant with their criticism and be like, hey, we're doing something right if we're winning the RLM guys over?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about, how do we put this? What we wanted to do was create something that we first and foremost were proud of, right? And when we wrote the scripts and started shooting and started seeing cuts and started seeing the score and started seeing VFX, and we really got a sense that I think this is working, right? Like, I think this is going to be in the ballpark of what we hoped it would be and what we intended. It then becomes about, look, the people who are critics of Star Trek, who are critical of either a specific show or the broader tone that the series may have taken over the last couple of years, those people are not wrong. They're valid in their criticisms. Those criticisms are true and personal for them. And so the real litmus test for us of whether what we did had consequence and mattered and was respectful was if folks like you guys, Dave, Red Letter Media, whoever, Robert, like, you were in some ways, I know you saw them on your own and then eventually, started corresponding with Terry. It was, that began to be the proof, right? That if you could sort of start to turn that tide and turn
can I get a t-shirt that says that?
Yeah. That maybe we had landed where we hoped to land. And, so it's important to Terry and it's important to me and all of us that, we want the gamut of fans, from the folks who were pre-programmed in their DNA to love it no matter what, to the folks who are going to be the harshest critics, to love it because we paid careful attention to it and we honored what they want Star Trek to be. So
we got a super chat from, I'll let you 1 minute. No, it's all yours, bro. Super chat from Foxhound. How can we show Paramount that we want more from Chris and Terry? Can we hammer home how much we want this style of Trek? Yes, terrytrek.com.
Look, if that question to me, if that question is cast to me, look, like I said, it's a weird alchemy of what gets a show greenlit these days, right? Like it's math, it's numbers, it's trajectory, it's Twitter, and it's honestly just the whims of the people who are at the control panel at the time. And so, but certainly it starts with a vocal and organized fan base. If you are loving what you're seeing, if you're liking, even if you're just liking what you're seeing and you want more of it, I think, it doesn't need to be about the wholesale reinvention of the Star Trek franchise. It can be about what's the next series after this series that is helmed and run by this particular person, Terry Matalas, with his particular vision and his crew of people, that will give you more in the flavor of what you've just seen. And if that's what you would like, then I think that there is absolutely a respectful way to go online and to be vocal and to tag and hashtag and at and shout at Paramount and its fellow creators to get this going, because we'd love nothing more than to continue to do it and to do it with the passion that we apply to it. And if that's what fans want from us, we're open to do it. And it just, that has to trigger the other dominoes that all need to fall in the right order for that to happen. So will it happen? I don't know. Would we love it to happen? Absolutely. How it can happen is be vocal, be loud. If you love the season, if you like the season, just keep saying it to the right people. So
can I jump in here?
Yes. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Dave.
Oh.
Nobody got that reference. Anyway, so I had a question about episode 2, and in particular, the reveal. You get a serious nod to it in the first episode, of course, but revealing that Jack was Picard's son.
Right.
There must have been a serious balancing act there to try to get this right, because you don't want it to linger on like it's a soap opera going on several episodes.
Right.
I feel that Riker he's sort of the audience. He keeps saying to Picard, "You're seeing what I'm seeing here, right? I mean, you're getting this, right?" And so, in a way, that's the seed is planted. It's not going to linger too long, and then in that, because you don't want it to be a case where Picard is well behind the audience and they figured it out first, right?
Right.
And going, well, you just figure it out, right? And then in that last scene with that beautiful unspoken moment on the bridge between Beverly and Picard, I don't recall if we've ever seen anything quite like that communicated in that way between characters on Star Trek before. Yeah. So, and there are so many moments, and I've said it to the guys before, and there's moments in episodes that haven't aired yet. This season, more than anything, have touched those kind of notes emotionally in a way that no other Star Trek season has, for me in particular. Were you nervous about that balancing act, and in particular that final scene, that final moment between Beverly and Picard?
It's interesting, having watched the episode and then having sort of looked on Twitter and followed the conversation around it and watching what critics are saying. For us, when we were writing it, it always felt like it really was not ever in question. That, for us, it was very much about, this is not an episode that is about the reveal of a truth that the audience may suspect. It's about the acceptance of a truth that we've all already figured out. Like, I think Picard, he knows what Riker's saying. He knows that the clear line is that this kid is probably my son, and he refuses to accept it. And so, we were always assuming, or not assuming, but we always moved forward from, if the audience, we weren't trying to keep it a secret. So if the audience went through episode 2, completely certain that this kid is Picard's son, that was less, the reveal of the truth of that was far less important than the moment that Picard accepted it and said, okay, the thing I've been trying to say no to this whole time, I have to say yes to, and now emotionally invest in and take command of the situation. So, that was the balancing act, right? Of how do we tell the audience without just coming out and saying it totally. The thing you think is true, absolutely true. This is the story of the one man in the room who doesn't want to believe it. coming to believe it. And you will find no bigger lover of dialogue than me. I love dialogue. I love clever turns of phrases. I love monologues. I love banter. I love deep emotional conversations. And so, I'm always the one with my hand in the air going, let's make it longer. So when you get to that moment at the end, the answer really was to go the exact opposite direction. Like there should be no words spoken here, right? Because it is just a simple truth expressed between two people who've never really needed words to communicate their truth before. And so, it was, I forget, I think it was probably Terry who came into the room and put that option on the table of, is it a no dialogue scenario? And I think we all immediately were like, yes, save that conversation for episode 3. They can have it out. They can talk about it. But this is just an emotional soul connection between these two people who know each other inside and out, admitting the same thing. And so it was just the right and natural way to do that moment.
I just want to apologize for my mic settings just now. Some people thought that I was shitting on the toilet. I'm not. I just wasn't on my right microphone. But yeah.
Was that Christopher joke from Star Trek 09? Was that what you were doing?
It was indeed, yes.
I mean, I'm like, of all the things to joke about, Dave. I wanted to follow up on that question. One of the reasons, like, I was really affected by episode 4, you were juxtaposing two men and families, the idea of families and sons. And, when Riker explains the reason that he left Deanna and his daughter behind was he couldn't get past the loss of his son, the darkness and the idea that they've been through space and he's got no indication that there's anything afterwards. And I wondered, from your horror background, I've always loved the idea of the Lovecraftian cosmic existential dread. And I'm a big horror fanatic. And at the end of the episode, where you do two things that I thought were really fascinating. One, Riker says, we witnessed a birth here, a kind of a birth here. And there's this really a true sense of awe and wonder, which is something that harks back to the end of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It definitely is echoed with, or it was an echo of Encounter at Farpoint. And I found that incredibly moving and uplifting. But then at the same time, you really pull off a tremendous gut punch when you reveal Jack sitting at 10 forward and asking Picard that conversation. And I'm even talking about it now, I thought, what a great, Star Trek is, after all, take away all the accoutrements of the 23rd century or 24th or 25th century. It's about character.
Yeah.
And I think what you've brought back with Picard season 3 is the characters that we know and love, and you've built upon them because they're not the same. And that moment, and then you see him say that in the flashback from 5 years ago, and then you see the recognition on their faces in the bridge, or at least Picard. Yeah. I thought that was a home run in terms of setup and payoff, and juxtaposing Riker talking. It was great the way he's talking. You think he's just recording this message, but then he's actually talking to Deanna.
Yeah.
And those two things really worked for me. And I'm like, to me, this is what I want out of Star Trek. I want to feel something. And I love the sci-fi action adventure allegorical storytelling. But really, I think back to moments in Balance of Terror when Kirk is asking, why me?
Yeah.
And McCoy gives that great speech about, in this galaxy, there's a mathematical probability, but there's only one of each of us.
Right.
Don't destroy the one named Kirk. You harked back in this episode to what I believe to be classic Star Trek storytelling. And I think a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, but no one's really mentioning that as much as they're talking to me about Odo's bucket. And I'm like, how's a changeling going to sneak a bucket on board a ship? You'd use a replicator and replicate the one changeling bucket they probably have, and then wipe the memory if you knew what you were doing, if you were great at clandestine activities or something. So I have these weird arguments, but I'm like, didn't you get when you were writing this, was that juxtaposition something that was planned from the beginning, like, or was it something that came organically out of what you wanted to do with episode 4?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think a lot of it was space is a great place to ask some existential questions, right? And when you've got a character who's dealing with grief and asking himself in a sense, where did my kid go? When you're out there in the stars, and which can be as hopeless as they are wonderful, and make you believe in science, which would tell you your kid went nowhere, but also in the beautiful and the spiritual, which would tell you that they went somewhere. That we don't want to linger. We don't want the show necessarily to dwell in questions of spirituality or religion, but it certainly felt like it had a place to ask that question using Riker as the sort of way to do that. And so, it was totally natural, and it felt like an interesting opportunity to begin to have that conversation and to express that sort of emotionality from his point of view. So, and
the awe and wonder of the birth of these creatures, it was counterpointed that too. I mean, it gave you that elation, and then to see that Riker felt that, and it sort of brought him out of his funk. Was I mean, to me, this is great television writing. It's great Star Trek writing and great TV writing.
Terry is not, and I am not, and the team that Terry has been able to assemble over time. We're not nihilists. We're really sentimentalists. And so, I think our desire is, if you ever find our particular characters in a degree of conflict or darkness that makes you feel uncomfortable, it is very likely probably trying to set up something that is going to lead you back to the light. We are hopeful people. And I think to some extent, these first 4 episodes are an effort to try to communicate to the audience that they can trust us, that whether it is something as small as you get to the end of episode 2 without an explanation as to why Jack has an English accent, and you may be on Twitter being like, why does he have an English accent? Don't they know that accents aren't genetic? Trust us, we'll address it. And why, to something as big as, why are these characters I love in conflict in a way that I haven't seen before? It makes me uncomfortable. Trust us, we'll resolve it. And so when we put in episode 3 that Beverly says, look, I told him where to find you, he chose not to. Don't worry, trust us, we will show you that he did, right? And so, hopefully when you've come to the end of these 4 episodes, you realize that if you have a question or an objection, wait a little bit. Hopefully we will answer it in a way that's satisfying to you, because we are mindful of all of these things. So.
Yeah, the trust is important. I think, for a lot of fans, they kind of lost a little bit of that trust because the first couple seasons of Picard started out that way, I think. But somehow along the way, the writer's room seems to have forgotten to address some of the things that came up. But you guys have really, in the first 4 episodes, have strongly shown us, okay, oh yeah, we can trust that. Oh, okay. Because you're right. A lot of the complaints have been like, oh, Beverly would never speak that way. Or, how could Jack possibly be his son? And you guys really just kind of methodically go through and answer everything. And then you see the fans actually in real time going, oh, okay. Oh, I got it. Okay.
And going along with that. So Chris, I just wanted to give you and the writers some props, because you guys actually did something that I wish more writers of TV and movies would do. And I always get crap from my co-host on the Salty Nerd podcast because I hammer it home, but I'm like, all it takes is one line of dialogue to explain a plot hole and not break suspension of disbelief. Like, there's so many times when I'm watching a TV show or a movie and something happens and I'm just like, wait, why is that happening? And they never address it. I mean, your stuff with the English accent, why the holodeck is operating on a ship that has no power, stuff like that. You guys just took one line of dialogue to address it, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'm back on.
Yeah.
But my question to you, in having said that, is where did Picard get the transport dampeners from?
Dude, he has been Chris. He's been asking this question since episode 1. He won't let it go. So
No,
I hope you have an answer for him.
What I will say, and what our internal logic, this may not satisfy you, I don't know, is there's a lot of shit on that vessel, right? It is as much a medical supply vessel as it is full of contraband that, Jack has been moving across the galaxy using to barter and trade access to places, medicine, supplies, etc. And so, it was the same. It was a version of the answer that I gave when, and that Terry gave when people were wondering why does Beverly have to cock her phaser? We've never seen that before. Phasers don't run out of ammo. And we were like, well, you don't know where she got that gun. That gun could have come from literally anywhere in the universe that Helios has been, right? And so it may not be the justification necessarily that folks on Twitter are looking for or will accept, but these are things that we do think about, right? We do ask ourselves these questions, even if not when we're writing the script. We'll be on set and someone will ask that, a production person, sometimes even an actor themselves will turn around and be like, where the hell did I get this? And so even if it's just for your own headcanon, you do have to acknowledge and come up with answers to these. So I will say
exactly what I told him, Chris.
Shit full of contraband. That's my answer.
Well, also they're doing underhanded things to bring medicine to people, so it's not a stretch that people would try and board their ship to take what they have by force.
Well, and I think Insurrection also established that every ship had those, so hopefully the Helios also does. But since we're on saltiness here, Chris, just really quick, the Picard F-bomb. So we've had some folks who didn't feel good about that, and kind of, there is a certain level of cussing that we're familiar with or not familiar with, or not with Star Trek. How did you guys address the cursing and kind of the thought process and especially Jean-Luc's big F-bomb there?
Well, I think it's very important to sort of state up top that, for the folks on Twitter who object, I shouldn't say Twitter, for the folks in the audience who object to the use of that word, that's fine. It is not, I will not argue if that word bristles you, if you don't associate it with the spirit of Trek, if you just don't find it palatable personally. I take no issue with people who will say that word didn't feel right coming out of his lips or on this show to me. I will only say that I will happily get into a spirited discussion with people whose criticisms of that use of that word go beyond their own personal tastes and their own sort of view of the level of classiness that one should impose upon Star Trek. I do think that word will be around 400, 500 years from now. I think, if anything, language becomes more colloquialized over time. So I think that an F-bomb 400 years from now will not be nearly as bad as an F-bomb today, or as it was when the word was invented 500 years ago. So it is a Swiss Army word. I will say this. There was one scripted use of the F word in this season, and then there was one improv use. And the one you saw last week was an improv by Patrick in the moment, who was delivering that particular monologue and felt that it was important for Picard to have a moment where there was no facade. It was just him and his raw emotional core, and he was moved to use that word. And there is no bigger protector of Jean-Luc's dialogue than Patrick. So when he suggests it, you have to listen and you discuss it, and ultimately, even though it may be intended to make you bristle a little bit and go, oh, that's not, I'm going to clutch my pearls a little. I haven't seen him say that. It must be important, and it must be human, and it must be true. So,
but was there any talk in the writers' room about how, in Star Trek 4, they didn't even know what curse words were? They had to go back to the past to understand those things. There's a certain continuity issue with the use of cursing. It's not just that Star Trek's not family friendly anymore. It's that in canon, in the universe, by this point, people have moved beyond cursing. They don't even know what these words mean.
Sure.
Yeah, Matt, the timeline changed when they brought the whales forward in time.
Yeah, the whales brought the F word.
Yeah.
Look, that's a fair point. I think that there are any number of instances after that, right? I mean, Picard curses in a foreign language in TNG. I think the idea of cursing is as much as about Kirk said damn it, right? Like, and that's an arguable point, but like I think that cursing has a place anywhere if it is used in the service of making a human point and expressing a truth. And so our barometer in the moment is, does it do that? And for us it did, but for many people it might not. And you know, we're less inclined to dig into you know, the minor continuity discrepancies that might exist between, well, Picard clearly knows how to say shit in French, but you know, we're saying that curse words don't exist today. You can have those sort of granular conversations, but for us it was, look, this, not everyone may like this, but we think it works. We think it's true in the moment. We think it reveals something about the character. So regardless of how you feel about it, I would just like fans to know it's not ill-considered. You know, we really care about this stuff, and we really have in-depth conversations about these things in a way where I hope that you will, at the very least, laugh at the second F-bomb of the season. There's only 2, I promise you.
Well, there's also something to say, Chris, about the fact that we're dealing with networks. So in the 80s and 90s, you obviously weren't going to be dropping any severe cuss words. And now with streaming, you have the ability to kind of, you know, stretch so much. You know, McCoy said, damn it, Jim, right? So there was a little bit of that in the past. So thank you for really just kind of laying that out for us, because I know that's a question people have. And I love that you said, you know, whether they like it or not, you support, you know, how they feel about it. But I think regardless, it's not having an effect on whether or not the season is good, because it's obviously good. So let me just ask you a question about Changelings, because we find out that Vadic, and Terry just confirmed this, there was a little bit of confusion that whether Vadic was a changeling or not, because some people, even Red Letter Media, is like, oh my God, a changeling attached to her hand and is controlling her, right? You know, which is hilarious. So can you just talk a little about Changelings and kind of what you can tell us so far?
Vadic is totally a changeling. You know, that was meant to communicate that. Who Vadic is communicating with when she does that is a much larger mystery of the season, and you will find that out going forward. Yeah, no, Vadic and her people are absolutely changelings. And you will get their story at some point deeper into the season as to why they're doing this, what motivates them, and hopefully you will understand their side of the equation in a rational and emotional way. So
I actually have a question. So her entire crew are comprised of changelings.
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions on that. I don't know if it can be answered yet. We're only 4 episodes in. The first one is, why are they wearing these sort of bird-like beaks, these outfits? And then the second one was, they speak in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's as if, so I wasn't aware the changelings had their own language.
Right.
I thought that, you know, they mostly would, because there was an episode of DS9 where the female changeling says to Odo that this way the solids speak is so imprecise, and that the link was the primary means by which they communicated. So can you speak to those 2 things?
Yeah, there is a very well-delivered monologue a little bit deeper into the season that Amanda Plummer gives, and some of that, their distaste for the shape, you know, for in some ways, you know, having to wear the face of your enemy, having to speak the language of your enemy. There's a certain distaste that they have for that, and so it felt interesting to us to explore, you know, how some of her crew, the majority of her crew, may not want to do that. She has embraced it more fully than they have. So that was sort of the result of a conversation about that. And then, honestly, I think the masks and are just an extension of. It's just awesome, Dave. Can't it just be awesome?
Well,
I thought they were.
I thought it was a 12. I thought it was a 12 Monkeys reference.
It is a little bit of a 12 Monkeys reference. It's one gone awry. When Terry developed that costume, it was very much a sense of hey, a little wink and a nod to the witness mask from 12 Monkeys wouldn't. And then for whatever reason, when those costumes showed up on the day, you're like, oh shit, yeah, no, it's just 12 Monkeys. But they're really cool, and we really needed to sort of and wanted to hide the ball on whether was this a human working with an alien crew, was this a crew of all humans, and so those masks were a way to sort of protect a little bit of the story throughout those first couple of episodes, and I presume they just like them, and so they wear them fashionably around the Shrike.
And obviously, it would have saved a bit of money not having to put all these guys in makeup as well, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
We got super chat from John.
I mean,
Chris, can I ask real quick? Like, if these changelings, like the Klingons and Starfleet and all these guys, were coming after Beverly and Jack, wouldn't they have known that they were changelings after like killing them and not disintegrating their bodies? Because I mean, it would become pretty obvious at that point that what they were dealing with, right?
I don't think we say specifically the degree to which Beverly and Jack have encountered and combated those. I don't know how many little changeling corpses have been left in their wake. They've certainly had attempts made at them that they've narrowly escaped. So I think that the first time she blows these guys away in the first episode, and when Riker comments upon the I haven't seen sort of ash or residue like this. Is probably the first time that anybody has really asked that question. So.
And you do deal with it.
Yes. Yeah.
We got a super chat from John P. Please don't let Metallus float away to another TV show or franchise. It's the best Trek since the end of DS9. Also, glad to hear you're a Moffat fan.
I don't want Metallus to float away to another show because if he has a job, I have a job. I want to continue to work on this. So
that's fair.
Look, there's nothing Terry would like more than to keep telling Trek stories, and there's nothing I'd like more than to keep telling them with him. So,
Foxhound, thank you for the super chat. Also said Picard would have said bloody. I guess you're right. Foxhound also said massive difference between Merida and the F-phone. That's true. There is a massive difference.
Totally true. That's completely fair. And I'm not trying to equate. I'm just saying that there is a way in which language colloquializes over time, and words change or lose meaning or lose their sharpness or whatever. And by that extension, if this were, what phrases we'll be using that don't exist today that will exist 500 years from now, right? So the linguistics of Trek has always, in most large part, been based on the linguistics of the year and time in which Trek is written. Nobody has sat down and gone, you know what, I'm going to do a Trek show where people have just elevated into iambic pentameter, or where people are using phrases like, I think Frak, right, is the best example of a science fiction show that was like, well, they're going to invent one new word in the next couple hundred years, so let it be that. I think those criticisms are fair if you bristle, but we have thought about it and talked about it. So
John P. also said the bird masks fit in theme with the ship.
Yes, by the way, totally true. I mean, that was designed to look avian and to have a ship that has an avian name. So
cool.
Rob, I was just going to say that, as I've often talked about how there were these books called The Best of Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And in them, there was like Leslie Thompson used to write Star Trek Mysteries Solved, and they would ask these questions, and they would ask the viewer, or she or he, I never knew if it was a he or she, would come up with answers to questions like this. And I think Star Trek fans, more than any other fan in the world, try and come up with reasons for things being the way they are.
Yeah.
And like you had pointed out, Chris, about not wearing the face of your enemy, I just assumed that if there are changelings out there, that they would be infiltrating all different kinds of species. And this might be a particular, we don't really know anything about them, but it might be a particular favorite species that these changelings chose to emulate. And maybe somehow, because you don't really get into the origins of the Shrike itself,
right?
Maybe they're connected.
Yeah.
The idea and whatever power, galactic power, was involved in the construction of this ship bristling with energy. And that's where Amanda Plummer, that's where Vadic got the whole concept of a Shrike in the first place. And maybe it was all like, they didn't call it a Shrike. That was her based on what we learn about her, and it all kind of works synergistically. That the
Right.
whatever the and that in my mind, in my own head canon, those uniforms came from the same place or maybe the same species, whomever built that ship. And like the viewer just said, and I when I was watching the show, I just thought it was kind of a subtle, kind of a cool, and there's a 12 Monkeys reference, but it worked for me only, and you don't really get into the origins.
Yeah. We would have loved. We, by the way, would have loved to. I mean, there was conversations in the room about, oh man, can we do an episode in which we talk about, you know, where the Shrike was constructed, how it was built, how it came into the possession. Like, there are probably 3 or 4 episodes that if we had a 13 or 14 episode season, we probably would have answered that question.
Well, that's what your IDW comic series will be about.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know, the Shrike and the race of people who built it and why they chose to take the form.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was changelings that infiltrated that place to get the ship built for Vatican in the first place.
We've talked about all of those options. So, you know, and maybe there's room to tell those stories in the future. We'll see.
Yeah.
We got a super chat from Garfield's Bizarre Adventure. Thank you guys for taking the time to develop Captain Shaw as an actual character with flaws and intrigue. The easy way out would have been to simply have him die and Riker take over. That's true.
Well, no, thank God Shaw did not die, because he's gained a legendary status very quickly. And there is more to his character arc over the season. You will see how that character grows and evolves and changes and is challenged, and ultimately where he comes out in the end. And so, you know, we're very happy that Stashwick is in all 10. So
another Shaw.
I cannot wait to see Star Trek dipshit from Chicago this year.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Craig Nelson for $5 says, would there be a chance to have a Shaw and 7 of 9 series? I love how they work off each other in episode 4.
I hesitate to, and I've seen this question a lot, and I hesitate to answer it because when we talk about spin-offs, what I don't want to do is like defang the rest of the season. Because, you know, if I say, yeah, it'd be great to do that, people are going to go, oh, well, great, when we know that Sean 7 of 9 live. And if I say, no, we really can't do that, well, then all of it's going to be, well, does one die, or do both of them die, or whatever. So I would only say that, you know, in some multiverse, if that show existed, I'd write the hell out of it. You know, they make for an exceptional pairing, and Todd and Jerry really did have fantastic chemistry on set. They worked very well together and communicated very well as actors. And so it's not surprising to me at all that people have taken to their relationship and want to see more of it. Certainly, you're going to see much more of it as the season progresses. But when we get into the realm of spin-offs, I kind of don't want to answer one way or the other, because what happens to what character and when, and the threat that at any point, you know, we could lose one. I don't want to undercut that, because that is a big part of the season moving forward.
You are right, because a lot of these comments are talking about a Titan spinoff. Like Question of Trek says, I'm really enjoying the season, and I hope we get a Titan spinoff. We all do. So. Okay. Yeah. I actually have a super chat from Echo Base. I'm in the camp of the F-bombs don't belong on Trek, but I'm still enjoying the show. Can you address the darkness of the show? What's set lighting outside the budget cost?
Look, some of it, you know, some of it is just a creative choice, right? Some of it is we're trying to tell a very nautical submarine story, and so you know, when you do a show like or a movie like Crimson Tide, for example, you know, people aren't walking around a submarine with the lights on, and you know, you want that sense of claustrophobia and tension really weighing down and pressing upon our characters. So to that extent, you know, not sort of washing the palette of the show in color or brightness is certainly it was certainly a creative choice. And
yeah.
And just to elevate the cinema of it, I mean, our DP John Joffin and his team, you know, were incredible. Crescenzo, who was incredible. You know, these guys know how to shoot the hell out of a show. And, you know, we really wanted this season to feel like a movie, and look like a movie and sound like a movie.
There's also some issues with Paramount Plus, I believe, too, right?
Oh, there have been issues with uploading. I think it was 2 and 4, something went wrong technically where the lighting and the image got crushed. So at least on day 1 or within the first few hours of them airing, the version was exceptionally extra dark.
Yes.
And so, if you watched those episodes in that window, revisit them, and hopefully they'll play a little brighter on your screen.
And apparently that was for you, Badger, for $5. Thank you for restoring my faith in Star Trek. But for the love of God, can someone in Starfleet buy a light bulb?
There is a handshake issue though between the Paramount Plus app and your TV sets, the HDR settings and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually fixed my issue by switching from 4K to 1080p and then back, and my HDR is all good now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it both on a 65-inch OLED and my older plasma. It looks incredible on my plasma set.
Yeah.
But let's not make a habit of telling people to adjust their sets to watch Star Trek.
No.
Yeah,
however, if there were a sufficient number of complaints about it, and again, I don't want to harp on about it too much. I mean, I've gotten past it and put it to bed. But the point is, there is obviously a number of people who were not too pleased. Possibly there could have been maybe a final cut of season 3 for Blu-ray and DVD, and maybe there could have been a final color grade done for those. Who knows?
I will say this, that we to your someone just made the point. I forget who it was, Robert and Brian. The smart TVs are dumb sometimes.
It's true.
And what I've found is I had the same problem everyone had with Game of Thrones, and it happens on weird shows right now. Like I was watching a show on Apple the other day where it would cut even just alternating shots in the same scene. Like one would be super bright, and then one would feel really muted. And so I think as TVs decide to make more decisions for us in the moment, that is something that we do have to be mindful of and sort of combat against, and try to, deliver a baseline visual that works for audiences. So.
I will say that the last time I watched the series, it was on Blu-ray and it looked spectacular. I don't know if that was the final master that's going to be released, because it was only Blu-ray. I'd love to see a 4K Dolby Vision HDR master.
Stunning.
But the Blu-rays, it was absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I've seen them as well, and they're gorgeous.
Yeah, we got a super chat from Big Worm. Thank you, Big Worm. So much to say, payoffs and hope, characters we recognize, building out their lives decades later in a way that jives with our headcanon. This is them riding off in the sunset. I love the bridge crew. Shaw, we need Star Trek Titan.
That's another question I want to ask about. One of the things I really like about what you're doing with your secondary bridge crew is there's definitely an effort. We always get cutaways to them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I loved about episode 4 was sort of that Robert Altman-esque overlapping dialogue. You see everybody knowing exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you get an idea that this is a very well-heeled, well-trained. These are people that really know their jobs.
Yeah.
And how much of that was writing, and was it? And you've got great actors. I mean, I really love everyone's faces. What was that like in the writing room, developing that bridge crew? And in terms of, did you have conversations with like Frakes when he came in and said, "Look, we need you to pick up insert shots. We really want to make sure that our bridge crew is focused and featured"?
Yeah, I mean, that in some ways is as big a challenge as, what do you do with Picard and Beverly and Riker, is how do you not make these people who are so pivotal to the function of the ship that your show is set on incidental in these scenes, right? Like, it is very, especially in a kind of paranoia thriller where changelings have infiltrated the ship, it becomes very important for the crew to be a character in the show. And so, we have a lot of great writers on the staff, and even just some of our researchers, PAs, etc. Who would all contribute little snippets of dialogue and exchanges that we can populate these scenes in the background with, so that it feels kinetic and functional, like these people really are communicating and working in sync with each other to ride this vessel. It takes quite a lot of effort to get that right, and we were really lucky to have just great actors. Like all of these, like whether it's whether it's Ashley, right, as Geordie's daughter, whether it's Tavine, the actress who played Tavine is terrific. Everybody has such banter and rapport that you really do feel like it's a lived-in bridge. That these people have been working together for a minute, and I don't think Shaw would run his crew any less. He would demand full efficiency from his crew, and I think they operate like that as well.
Chris, can I ask you? So, the first season of Picard had this ginormous budget. Okay, the return of Patrick Stewart, stuff like that. I had heard talk about like up to $100 million for season 1. You guys notoriously didn't have a lot of money to work with, and yet season 3 looks better than any of the previous seasons does. So can you tell us about some of the challenges of working with a smaller budget, and isn't that reason why Paramount should hire you guys to keep doing it, because you can bring it in at cheaper cost?
Yeah, I mean, I can say this: we learned we learned a lot from 12 Monkeys, right? You're doing a serialized time travel show where you're visiting a different time period almost every week on a relatively small sci-fi budget. Capital SYFY by sci-fi budget.
Sci-fi, yeah.
And we did not have a lot of money to play with, and so it really teaches you how to stretch your dollar. How do you shoot efficiently? Where do you shoot? What partners do you use? And we have been very fortunate in that process to make very key relationships. Or whether it's relationships with DPs, Steven, who does our score this season, came to us with us from 12 Monkeys. And then also just to know, look, you have to write to what you have. You can make a single room interesting with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of, and if you know how to really craft character drama, we could have found a way to set this whole season just on that bridge and never leave the bridge. If we had to, and we would have created story that made that work and given you shifts in aesthetics so that you don't feel, you never feel bored in a scene. Like you can use lighting to paint one room in multiple ways so that, as the ship finds itself in different scenarios, I've been in this room for 5 episodes now, and yet it's looked different every time. And so like you can really create the illusion and the feeling of scope, without having necessarily the money to just throw it on screen. And in a lot of ways, you benefit from that. Those limitations often help you, because at the end of the day, when you can't afford to go down to a planet or do like a giant 100-person phaser battle or something, you either have to come up with one awesome stunt that you can afford to shoot, or you have to come up with an amazing character scene to take its place. So, and a lot of times you end up winning in that scenario, because otherwise you might have just lazily defaulted to, okay, well, we can just do some dumb sci-fi shit here, so because we can afford to, so let's do that. And in here, we didn't have that luxury. We could never default to scope. We had to create that using what we had, and we're by no means a cheap show. I mean, we had good budget. We were well supported, but certainly we didn't have the resources of 1 and 2. Some of that was coming out of COVID. All of those challenges. But I think we're able to make do with what we had pretty well. So
did you guys? I mean, one of the things I've been saying to people about this season was it's essentially a bottle season, which is a genius thing. For those of you who don't know, a bottle show is when a show is shooting on standing sets and you're not going on location like in season 2.
Yeah, and
you've done things like reuse the La Serena, I believe, for the Shrike.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the sets. I mean, making it a space battle movie, cat and mouse thing, really allows you to make four episodes and amortize those costs, which is genius. And if people go back and look at the original Star Trek, like Doomsday Machine, one of the great bottle episodes ever done for Star Trek, you're just on your standing sets and you put a little debris in them and now you're on the Constellation.
Yeah.
Auxiliary control, whatever. When you guys were writing this season, how much of the idea that you were going to be call it a bottle season for lack of something, but was that something that you guys consciously decided so you could do more and have more budget to do things within those sets that you might not have been able to do in terms of how you were shooting and or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of considerations that go into it. We're bringing a lot of those original cast members back, so
sure.
Obviously you want to be able to afford to do that, and that's going to be more important than spending that money on a space battle or a new set or whatever. So a lot of it is just what's the story you're telling, right? How much do you really need? And then, okay, once you've spent all of that down, what do we have left? And then what limitations do we then have to overcome creatively, narratively, etc.? So you mentioned the Shrike, and that's actually a really good example. You might notice if you're watching in the La Sirena scenes that most of those scenes in the La Sirena take place in the up top section. You don't really see that sort of subsection that you would see. And so sort of a little behind the scenes, when it came time to create the Shrike, you get into budgetary questions like, okay, the room that it takes on a sound stage, if we were just going to build a ship from scratch, building the construction and the labor of creating the framework of that. Whereas we had an amazing production designer who looked down into the bottom of the La Sirena and said, well, what if we put a roof on that and use that square footage and create a whole new world down there, and did it brilliantly. You never know if you didn't know.
That's what great television producing is.
So you just have to show up and be not just creative on the page, but creative in front of the camera. And if you do that right in the right places, you really stretch a dollar.
So speaking of stretching dollars, you guys made Metallis 4 work really well up in Santa Clarita. Can you tell us a little bit about Metallis 4, Terry's namesake?
That was an amazing experience. I mean, that was one of the big spends, right, of the season. Like, we knew we had to get out of the ship. We knew we had to sort of, even though Metallis 4 is very much it's a shady, shadowy, organized crime planet. Like, we need to take a breath. We need to get off these ships. We need to have this story. And even that is all set in one sort of section of the world, right? So even that is a consideration. But our production designer, Dave Blass, did an extraordinary job creating essentially a sci-fi city block in the deserts of Santa Clarita. Walking around that thing, the projections on the screen were all in real time. Like you could have completely lost yourself in that set. And he did it, on a budget with nothing but just sort of creative execution, and we were so blessed that our crew this season was terrific. I mean, everybody did what was asked of them to the height of their ability, and with the minimum of waste. Nobody wasted anything. Every part of the animal was used, and I think we got something that gives us real scope, and that was an achievement. I mean, just like you'd be hanging out in Sneed's bar while they were shooting scenes elsewhere, and you're like, I wish this was a functioning bar because I would live here if I could. So,
Well, I will say that Robert made a good point on a different stream where he was talking about how it feels more like Star Trek when you're on a ship.
Yeah.
And in previous seasons, like we were just out in LA, it was didn't feel like Star Trek. But now like we've got like the cat and mouse game and the nebula, and just the fact that we're on a starship just makes it feel more like Trek.
Yeah, and that was very much what we wanted to do. We wanted to do a space story because that's what Trek is to us. So we were blessed to do it.
So Chris, Terry specifically credited you for a couple of things that we see this season, your ideas, but I can't remember the specifics. Can you tell us what are some of the things that you attributed that ended up in the show specifically?
Oh, I don't want to do that. I feel like I
did it already, but I forgot.
I feel like I'm patting myself on the back. If you have specific examples, I will confirm or deny. But I will say that what I enjoy in the room is I really enjoy trying to come up with interesting, creative sci-fi solutions to things, and I don't. The season is really a harmony of, many terrific voices, and so I'm very hesitant to take credit for any one thing. But I will say, I am proud of. I am a dialogue guy. So if there is a line that ever strikes you as probably being too, if not obnoxiously clever, you can blame me.
So I want to ask you this: whose idea was it to throw the asteroid, and who wrote the line? You're goddamn right, I did.
Goddamn right.
Okay, I'll take credit for that. I think it may have been my idea to throw the asteroid. I don't remember if I wrote the line. That script is very much the child of Terry and Sean Shredder, who's an extraordinary writer. I was very blessed to co-write two with him, and comes from the Monkeys world. But the tractor beam stuff, like the symmetry of throwing the ship and then throwing the asteroid, was something that we kind of planned early on. Was how do you do a reciprocal thing where he gets a little payback for the thing she did 2 episodes before? So all those little moments are stuff that are pre-planned. But I'm very hesitant to take credit for anything specific unless it's specifically put out there. So,
well,
okay.
Whose idea was it to do the line "some dipshit from Chicago"?
I actually don't remember whether that was in the script or that was a Stashwick improv.
Stashwick is from Chicago.
Yeah, it certainly speaks to Stashwick's personal life. So it very well may have been something that he added to the character, might have been added on the day. I'm not quite sure if that was in the first draft of the script or not. So
we have a super chat from Admiral Taji Tiberius Monk for knock 100. I think it's $10. I'm having the best time with Picard season 3. Very first time a weekly series has me watching every episode twice. Who wrote the scene with the asteroid throwing? I owe him or her a Norwegian cheese wheel.
You can send that to Chris.
All of your cheeses too, and I will give you the address. You can send it to me. I'll take it. Just with a giant Norwegian.
You're about to get a lot of cheese, dude.
Yeah. Oh God, don't do that. Don't send me cheeses. Unless someone else wants to send me crackers or something.
So Jonathan Frakes has just been an inspiration this year, this season. We know that he was hesitant to come back just from some stuff that Terry has shared. He's like, I don't act anymore. I'm a director, and he's an amazing director. What do you say about his transformation into this incredible actor this season? He takes it to the next level, in my opinion. So
I don't think it's a transformation. I think it's always been there. I think it's amazing what you can do when certain guardrails are taken away from you. And with what you're given. And we really tried to give everybody the best meal we could give them to work with genuine conflict this season in a way maybe that they had never really been able to explore in TNG proper. And he's an MVP, man. He is one of the coolest, kindest cats I know. He's just a genuine person. And for as much as he fills a room and for as big as his personality is, he's genuinely humble. He's genuinely kind, treats his peers and his crew with respect, and he shows up and he slays it. And it's an honor and a privilege to work with him. And I think I think he just did extraordinary in front of and behind the camera. And we just tried to give him, scenes to work with and allow him to access the ability, and I don't even want to say the potential, but the ability that we knew was there. And I think he achieved it and then some. I mean, I think he's extraordinary this season.
Speaking of Jonathan Frakes, I got to ask, as the only person who hasn't seen the full series on this panel, and I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but do we see the Riker maneuver where he actually goes over the chair? Is that in the season?
I don't believe so. That would be an impressive feat. Those chairs are very high back. But
never stopped them before.
Right.
Can I just say that there's a really underrated moment in episode 4, and it's a Shaw moment again, and it speaks to that. So that line about just some dipshit from Chicago, and it's an incredibly intense speech that he gives, and it's wonderfully written and it's wonderfully performed. But it's the moment when Picard and Seven go to his quarters afterwards to try to convince him to work with them. And, so often in so many shows these days, it becomes about sort of emotionally hugging it out, or screaming at each other, or asking for apologies, or there's no hurt feelings. Like, what I love about it is they just deal with it like guys who are professional military people. Like, Picard goes there, he just says, "Yeah, I need your help, even if you are some dipshit from Chicago." And what's great about Shaw's response is that there's such self-deprecation in that moment. He's like, nice. He appreciates the put down. He appreciates the put down in the sense that he respects people who have the balls to go toe to toe and stand up for themselves, and I think that makes him all the more endearing as a character.
Yeah, and his introduction to the series, where he's at dinner and he started before them, he's just like power moving left and right and just putting Picard and Riker in their place. Like that was probably the best introduction of a character I've seen in decades. Like, it was masterful.
That scene, the dinner scene, is a particularly fun one. It was fun to get under the hood of that and try to figure out, like, how do you craft these lines that make him. I mean, he's totally being a dick in that scene, but like, he also has to be a likable dick. Like, you have to be like, well, he's not wrong, and he's throwing his kind of cavalier weight around in a way that I find surprising. And you're like, but I think I kind of like him. And then you gotta have the door open for endearing to him further throughout the season. So that scene was a blast to write. So.
Yeah, I think my favorite Shaw moment is when John Luke says, like, Jack's my son. He just turns around, he's like, God damn it. Okay, let's do this. Yeah, like that moment was that's the moment where I was like, I want to see this guy have his own series.
Yeah, because it's the moment, right, where like he's reached the edge of the nebula of his assholishness, right? Like, he's just like, I can't tell this guy we got to kill his kid, right? Like, so you've pushed past all of his, not all of his, but the outer layer of his defenses into his humanity, and you're like, okay, there's a person behind this somewhere, and then you get to know them in short order. So
we got a super chat from TN Toys. I think the Shrike is a Breen ship, given their link to the Dominion. Would there be any link to the Breen and Romulan supernova, as their sole desire was for the Romulans during the Dominion War?
How the connection to the Dominion War and what Vadic and her people want is a big mystery. So I won't even tip my hat one way or the other with that answer.
That's a really good answer, my friend.
Yeah.
We got a super chat from Ian Carroll's. Nicholas Meyer once said, "Art thrives on restrictions," in reference to the budgetary constraints.
Excellent. Anybody else have any questions for Chris on the panel?
Yeah, what happens next episode?
No, don't answer that, Chris.
I'll just tell you. Next episode is a big one. It has big consequences. I think it will leave fans in a really interesting place. It is one of the ones that I will be on Twitter anxiously waiting to see what fans think of it. 5 and 6 are a really, really interesting,
wild
couplet of episodes. So
I know you've a specific writing credit for 6, I believe, and I would love to speak to you about that one, because there's a lot. There is a lot. I mean, I know all of the YouTube channels that deal with breaking down all the lore analysis and everything. They're going to have a field day in particular with that one. Right.
I would be happy to talk to you guys about that. I'm very proud of 6. 6 is everyone killed it on that episode. So.
Well, Chris, it was lovely to meet you. Guys are going to have to bounce. Thanks so much for
Thank you, Dave.
Good to see you, Dave. We still need to be able to talk, though. You and I.
You guys, super chat from John. Yeah, all right, Dave. Thanks, man. We got super chat from John Kakaza. Oh, man, I can't say your last name. I'm sorry. Kakaza. We need Star Trek USS Titan following the adventures of Captain Shaw and his crew, exploring the boundaries of known space, written and produced by the same team. Yeah, everyone has pretty much the same opinion on that. So, and we're only 4 episodes in. So I imagine how much that opinion is going to further by episode 10 or episode 6.
Well, we can tell you guys that episode 4 is as wonderful and as great as it is just the beginning. Like, this just continues to get better and better every episode. And, I'm not afraid to say there are some moments where, I got a little choked up and maybe shed a few tears. And, and I'm excited to see what everybody else is going to do here going forward. Chris, we thank you so much. Do you have anything else you just want to share with us, share with the fans?
No, I just want to thank you. I want to thank everybody. You know, we really did make this with love. You know, we are all a small, dedicated band of people who grew up with Trek in our DNA, who have deeply personal. You could bring every writer on, and they will tell you a story that'll bring a tear to your eye about how they connected with Trek and why Trek came into their lives. And so, you know, we showed up to make something that was meaningful, that mattered, that finished a story and opened some doors for new ones. And it's really a love letter to something that matters for us. And I hope that translates to the fans. I hope they're loving it. I hope they continue to love it. And any support that is shown by anybody, we humbly accept it. And we are deeply appreciative of you guys carrying the torch and banging the drum, and whatever you need, you know, we are here in appreciation for that. So
yeah, Chris, I was hypercritical of new Star Trek, especially the first 2 seasons of Picard, and when these guys came to me and said, no, season 3 is going to be a banger, I was like, yeah, right, you know, like I don't believe you.
He threatened me physically, Chris.
Yes,
he said I was going to come to my house and physically harm me if I was
by episode 4. Like when Riker throws command to Picard, he sits down, you hear like the next gen theme come in. He's like, engage. I got chills down my spine. At that moment, I was a convert. I was like, the Popcast guys were right. God damn it. 100%. And like, I don't think you and Terry know just how important what you guys are doing is, because when Terry came on this panel, he was surrounded by people who were hardcore anti Kurtzman Trek.
Oh man, I felt bad. I felt like I contributed to like a public flogging.
Yeah, but what you guys have done is you've made every single one of the harshest critics, except maybe like, you know, one who shall not be named, fans of Star Trek again. Like that is a huge feat, and I gotta tip my hat to you guys. You guys knocked it out of the park.
It matters to us what you guys think, and that means a great deal. We were just trying to do the best version of something that we loved, and if we're true to that, then hopefully that resonates with the fans, and it seems to be doing that. And there, like you said, there's 6 episodes. There's a wild ride left to go. So you know, we appreciate everything.
Chris,
there's a super chat from Grim. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just going to ask one totally unrelated question, because I have not told Terry how much I've wanted to speak with you, not about Star Trek.
Okay.
But I'm a huge horror guy.
Yeah.
I am surrounded by hundreds of horror novels, and what did you think of the new Hellraiser movie?
Oh god, that's a complicated question.
You don't have to answer it. I just figured since I have you here.
I have a very intense relationship with the Hellraiser franchise.
Oh, I know.
Did a run of comic books. I don't know if you read them. I worked very closely with Clive to develop what was kind of an alternate third movie in comic book format to the first 2. I really like Bruckner as a director. I think The Night House is quite a good film. And so I think there are things. I certainly don't want to be critical. I mean, to get anything made is a miracle. I will say there are real big swings. It is by far the best. It is the best of the Hellraiser sequels after 2 or 3. In that it tries something, it has a vision, it clearly is doing something. A little bit slow in to get going, but then kind of when it does, you're like, oh shit, this is bonkers. So there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I will gladly have a conversation with you about Clive and horror any day of the week. So
yeah, yes, I was lucky to interview Clive 15 years ago at length, and I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker.
Yeah, Clive is a mentor and friend of mine, and I had written two feature films for him based off of pieces of work of his. Clive was the one who first introduced me to Stephen King, who optioned a story to me, which I had adapted, which kind of got me my first representation in the field and stuff. So it really is Clive that I credit with sort of kicking off my career as a writer. And so I'm happy to have a conversation with you any other time. We can talk.
Sure, absolutely. I just thought I'd get you now.
We got a super chat from Grim. He's asking about the lighting again. We did answer that already, Grim. It was a stylistic choice. It's trying to be more cinematic, but thank you for the super chat.
We're actually going to do. There's an episode coming up. You'll see where it's only people with lighters. Just lighters.
The entire episode is just lighters. Yeah,
that's all it is. So you're really going to love that one.
Another question from Dan Candy. Will we get a scene of the crew singing? And I can't pronounce that. I must know.
That's from Deep Space Nine. Move along home.
Sadly, no. And just one more thing to say. It's important that I am one voice in a choir here, and I'm really happy to speak for the show, for you guys to have me on to answer these questions. But, it is important for folks to know we had a tremendous writer's room. Everybody in that room is deeply passionate about this, is deeply skilled. You could have an equally, probably more so interesting conversation with any one of those people any day of the week. And we were all just serving the vision of Terra Metallis. So I'm very happy to have talked to you guys for an hour and 40 minutes. But my voice is one of many, many voices that contributed to the chorus of the show. And so all of whom made it what it is. So to the fans and to them, we are deeply appreciative. So.
Well said.
So some things on that. Trek fan said, I want to enjoy Star Trek Picard with my kids, just as my parents let me watch Star Trek TNG. Why not cut the cuss words so that Star Trek Picard can be enjoyed with the next generation?
We talked about that a little earlier, but I will say this. I mean, this is the theme of this season, right? In some ways, is how do we change as we grow and how do we stay fundamentally the same? And so it would be difficult to address how those characters went from being younger adults to older adults without doing that without some adult context. So if by the time you get to the end of the season you feel like it's something you want to show and can show to your kids, there's only 2 F-bombs and you can locate them easily and fast forward past them and I apologize to whatever degree you bristle at it, but we do think of these things and consider these things. It's important to us as well. So
yeah, that's a great point. You can find those moments pretty easily. Also, you can start off with Prodigy with your kids, which Prodigy was, at first I was like, I'm not watching a cartoon. And then I watched, I'm like, oh my God, this is Star Trek, and
it's pretty good.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
I know a lot of writers over on Prodigy, and they are diehard Trek fans and terrific writers in their own right. So, if you're looking for family-friendly fare, there it is.
Good point.
Yeah, it's very friendly. Okay, real quick. Sam Ann, just wanted to extend my thanks for the pure quality of this season to Chris and Terry. The first 4 episodes took me back to DS9 and the Jem'Hadar hunting the Defiant. It's great to have hopeful Trek back. Additionally, Chris, and I can't find the super chat, I'm sorry, but Chris Kakaza asked, Chris, any chance this season can be re-edited into a trilogy movie box set for collectors? Seems like it would fit well in a movie format.
Who knows? I mean, certainly I think that there's one cohesive 10-hour story that is told. I'm sure our genius editors could get in there and edit any number of ways. By the way, our editing team on the show is killer. Drew, our editor, is insanely talented and really should just edit everything always. So
Anthony Pearson says, I love the Titan is almost a character in season 3. That's proper Star Trek.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
Dave Blass killed it with the they look like models. So gorgeous.
Yeah. JT asked, did Chris join the stream because of Kadish?
Oh,
that's an inside joke. Sorry.
Everyone's here because of me.
Right.
I'm that popular.
Andre Benson said episode 4 felt like it could have been a mid-season finale. Yeah. I mean, a lot of TV nowadays does literally cut off at like 4 or 6 episodes and make you wait a month and a half. This could have been that.
It is the end of the beginning. So we're now kind of into the season proper, and then there's one hell of a finale. So
yeah, I think Terry called it like the first act or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Patty says, Kirk said, you Klingon bastards in Star Trek 6. It's accurate. Anthony Peterson says, love that so far the main characters in season 3 have tight and developed arcs, and season 3 has a cinematic feel to it. Hope the Paramount Plus Trek continues this.
As do we.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big Worm also said, exactly. The crew is featured for sure, but the characters make sense. They know their job and are professional. They are Starfleet. I want to see more. And Good T Nice House says, at times we think big explosions and actions is what sells. With Trek fans, a bridge, corridors, uniforms, and rank are the recipe for epic stories.
Yep. We totally agree.
I agree.
All right.
One more, guys. Son of John. Guys, stop belly aching over the lighting. Let's get a spin-off with Terry Metellus at the helm. Then the lighting can be whatever it likes. By the way, Rob, I'm in you and Chris's Shuttleberry Pie Camper.
Ooh, ouch. Yeah, that's not really private, but it's definitely an in-joke into my personal professional situation.
Sounds very private. I don't know.
Well, it's not private. I found out about it on the internet.
Uh-oh.
Let's finish with this super chat. I just want to say thanks. The season is what we Trek fans wanted. It's been great so far. Hope you guys get a chance to do more.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's obvious that the love and the hope is there. And I think if you guys want more, one of the things that we have set up a change.org. One of the ways that you can help support is go to terrytrek.com. It's a change.org petition. You can sign that. We're going to be pushing that out to as many people as possible, try to get Paramount's attention so they can make sure they see how much this show is loved. I mean, we did it with Strange New Worlds, right? Put out a petition, then everybody attacked Alex Kurtzman at Comic-Con, and he finally gave in. So, we just have to be persuasive. I do want to thank Chris so much. Thank you for coming here. It's been such a blessing to have you. Robert, thank you so much. Dave, for being on the show. And, of course, our friend Matt Kadish from the Salty Nerd Podcast. Do you guys want to share anything you got going on coming up, Rob?
No, just more episodes of this. I am doing a Picard after show every Thursday. We did it with Todd Stashwick last week, and Bill Hunt from the Digital Bits and I have been going through each episode for a long period of time, and it's a lot of fun. And again, we ask that you would watch it, but you can watch it before. We don't want to spoil it for you. I will say that episode 5 has one of my favorite exchanges between characters in a long time. And it's a long time coming, and I was very surprised seeing it. So you Star Trek fans are going to be very happy.
Amen.
So,
Matt?
Chris, thank you for coming on and answering all these stupid questions I had.
No.
But I used to work at Paramount Studios, and I have some friends there who came up with Terry back when he was on the Star Trek shows. And I've been bugging him through them to come on the Salty Nerd Podcast and let us interview him about 12 Monkeys, because it's one of my all-time favorite series. And now I'm going to have to start bugging you to come on and also talk about 12 Monkeys. Because let me tell you something. That is the only TV show or movie or TV show that has ever gotten time travel right. And it's so hard to do that, it's rare. Like when I was watching that series, I was legit like, oh my God, these guys actually thought this through and they got it right. And I think that show, they can lay claim to fame as being the only show to ever get time travel right. So props to you on that. And I hope you'd consider coming on with Terry to talk with us about that show.
I will happily talk 12 Monkeys with anybody anytime. So you just give me the time and date and I'll be there.
From Ghost Rider to all those involved in Picard Season 3, may your work bring glory to you and your house. Kapla.
Thank you.
Well said. And on that note, next week, if you guys want to come back, we'll have Picard Season 3 production designer Dave Blass on the show. He's going to be talking, and of course, Chris mentioned him a couple of times and some of the great things that he did for the season. So we're excited to talk to him next week. Also, don't forget to check out that EKSTER wallet link if you guys can get a chance. The link is in the description below, 25% off your order. Gentlemen, we appreciate you guys. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we cannot wait to see Chris episode 5 coming out in just a few days. Thank you again for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.